you ever heard the phrase, every man for himself? A better way to use it is everybody for themselves. It's the idea that when there's something that everybody wants, or something that's in high demand, nobody plays nice. It's like going to a shopping mall on Christmas and trying to find a parking spot. No one is practicing generosity when there's only one spot open and 5 cars racing to get it. It's every person for themselves. We all know what it feels like to be in an every person for themselves type of situation. In a lot of ways, high school can feel like that. For example, maybe you and your friend like the same person, so you go to ridiculous lengths to get your crush's attention because it's every person for themselves. Maybe you fight for seats in the cafeteria because you're desperate to sit next to that certain person. Maybe you fight for the first chair in band, creating a totally dramatic storyline between you and your competitors. You fight for starting spots on the team or starring roles in a play. You fight your siblings or your step-siblings for the remote, the car, the last piece of pizza. Sometimes it can feel like all you do is fight for yourself, because if you don't fight for yourself, no one else will. The past couple of weeks, we've been talking about something that we all really want: freedom. We all want to be free from worrying about what everybody thinks, free from consequences or bad decisions, free from worry and stress. The problem is, it sometimes feels like the opposite is true. Rules feel like prison. We feel like we're all wrapped up in what other people think of us, and sometimes we feel stuck in the consequences of our own choices. Because of all of that, it can feel like even though freedom is what we really want, it's not something we can attain. How can we feel free when we constantly have to watch our backs, look out for ourselves, and fight for our place? One more thing, it's easy for us to keep tabs on how we measure up to the people around us and where we fall in those ranks. And that's not freedom. If that's freedom decided by other people, it's a trap to control. What if there's another way at looking at freedom? Let's talk about it, right? In this series, we've been exploring a letter in the Bible that is all about freedom. It's a letter that was written by a guy named Paul, who wrote to a church in a region of Galatia. And the thing that is important to remember is that behind each letter of the New Testament was a distinct group of Jesus followers being written to. These were communities found all over the known world at the time, facing challenges unique to their area and the people who made these regions. So we need to remember that when we read through these. We are the observers. Paul helped start a church in a place called Galatia. Everything he taught was based on the message that Jesus came to reveal what God was like. The message was that because God was good, loving, forgiving, and desired to be close to us, there was no longer any reason to follow some specific strict Jewish law to prove anything to God. But there was a problem. A group of teachers showed up in Galatia after Paul left, and their message was different than what he said. These teachers believed that there were certain commands from the Jewish law that needed to be obeyed in order for the Galatians to be considered true followers of Jesus. Paul wasn't happy. For one thing, his authority was being challenged. But that wasn't all. Paul was passionate about the message of Jesus, and a big part of what Paul was so passionate about was the freedom that Jesus offered. But these teachers were not preaching the message of freedom. They were preaching a message focused on following certain rules. So Paul writes this letter to the Galatians with this whole controversy in mind. This tension is the backdrop to everything that Paul has to say. And Paul knew that if you let yourself begin to think that you need to work for God's love, acceptance, and grace, you're missing the whole point of why Jesus came here to begin with. To tell us that we didn't need to earn any of that. God's love, acceptance, and grace is already ours because of Jesus. And not only that, Paul knew that if we believed this to be true about God, it would affect the way that we saw other people as well. Because when you start to see yourself needing to earn God's love and grace, then you start to see other people needing to do the same. You start competing with people around you, and before long, you start living like every person for themselves. Listen to what Paul had to say. For you have been called to live in freedom, my brothers and sisters. But don't use your freedom to satisfy your sinful nature. Instead, use your freedom to serve one another in love. In other words, your freedom isn't just about you. How you use your freedom affects those around you. Paul pushes the message of freedom over and over and over again. He's determined to make sure that the Galatians don't forget this. But he also knows the temptation we all face to take our freedom and abuse it. use it to benefit ourselves, improve our standing, make ourselves the best, and operate like it's everyone for themselves. So, what's the alternative? Paul would say this: use your freedom to serve one another in love. In fact, Paul says even more. For the whole of the law can be summed up in this one command: love your neighbor as you love yourself. Remember, Paul is writing to a group of people who were told that the law was for them to obey to actually be followers of Jesus. And so Paul puts it all on the table. He says, you say that there's more laws that need to be obeyed? I say the whole law is summed up in loving one another. Paul was doing more than that, creating a mic drop moment. He really and truly believed that the whole law summed up in one commandment. He was taking his cue directly from Jesus, who said this: my command is this, love each other as I have loved you. So Paul wasn't just trying to help the Galatians embrace an idea that he thought was best. He was reinforcing one of the most important teachings of Jesus. It's as if Paul is telling them that more is on the line than just their freedom. The well-being of those around them is on the line when we don't use our freedom for good. When we use our freedom to be selfish, other people don't get the things that they need. When we use our freedom to say whatever we want, we hurt those around us. We begin to live in a way where it's every person for themselves, and that's just dangerous. The thing about freedom is that you can use it for anything. The choice is yours. Literally, you can use it to love or hurt people. Paul is telling us that our standing before God, the way that God sees us and feels about us, isn't at risk of our own behavior. Sure, you may be free to talk about others and the things that bother you, annoy you, and make you angry. You may be free to judge the good or the bad behavior of those around you. You may be free to tear each other down, bringing attention to the way that others are doing it wrong. But there are consequences. It will cost you. It will cost others. Eventually, it will do what Paul says. It will destroy you and destroy others. Because this is every person for themselves way of living that tears others down and makes yourself look better. Ultimately, you hurt others, hurt your ability to love them, your freedom is connected to their freedom, and a real freedom is found in loving one another. Believe me when I tell you, you don't want to live in a world where nobody's looking out for someone else. You can use your freedom for something better. Think of it like this: you are not just free from, you are free for. You are free for others and their good. You can live in the freedom Jesus gave you, and you can use your freedom to love others, putting an end to everyone for themselves way of life. Because of that, we need to spend some time asking ourselves this question: am I using my freedom to put others first instead of fending for myself? How can I fend for those around me? This goes against our natural instinct. That's why Paul says living this kind of freedom comes from God. Putting others first is not easy. It feels backwards. But that's what God wants for us. And that's where we'll find real freedom. Freedom from the drive to be perfect. Freedom from trying to win the approval of others. Freedom from fighting to put ourselves first. Instead, we can use our freedom for others.
Hey everyone, this is Henok Brahanu. I am the founder and CEO of Care 117, and we're located in Ethiopia. For those of you who don't know where Ethiopia it is found in the continent of Africa. And I'm currently standing in a Care 117 compound. So let me share a little bit of my story with you. So my mom was 16 when she had me, and she escaped an arranged marriage, come to the city looking for a job and looking for opportunities. And because she did not have any education, it was impossible for her to find a job. Not having education is a very common thing for women or for girls in Ethiopia, because usually the parents do not have the resources to send their kids to school. Because she did not have any educational background, and also because she did not have skills, and more importantly, because she was 16 and she escaped an arranged marriage, like I said, came to a city where she has no idea how things work or how things are. She really found it hard to find a job and to support me and her. And because of that, it was really hard for her. There was a lot of times we could not put food on the table, or where she could not pay rent, and we had to be kicked out of a lot of houses, and we had to look up to other people and ask for help, to pay our rent or to put food on the table. So basically, we did not have any financial freedom or the freedom to choose how we want to live and to choose what we want to do with our lives. My mom is my hero. She worked so hard and she worked so much to provide for her family. And going back, I think if there was anybody that could actually give her a chance, I think she could have done much more and achieved much more. So as I get older, I realize that my mom's story was a very common story in my country. And I also learned that women are usually forced to give up their child and to drop their kids at an orphanage because there was simply no way that they could provide for their child. So that is when I decided that no woman should go through my mom went through, and no woman should go through the pain of dropping her child at an orphanage and losing her child and letting somebody else raise her child. So that is when I decided to invest my life into starting an organization like Carry 117 that empowers women, that prevents orphans, and that puts families together. All right, guys, so let me take you inside and show you what's going on in. Come on. So this is where everything is happening. This is where we teach them how to cut. Over there is the cutting area, and over here is the preparing area, and these are our saws. So we teach them how to cut, how to measure, how to sew, everything that they need to know into how to make these beautiful bags. So guys, because these women earn a paycheck, they don't have to worry about sending their kids to an orphanage. They don't have to worry about putting food on the table. They don't have to worry about paying for their rent and getting kicked out of the house. So this is basically what Carry 117 does. At some point in our lives, we each get to choose on how we use our freedom and where to invest our life in. And you know what? I am so glad I got to choose this.
So what do you think would happen in your school, in your family, or even your friend group if you decided to use your freedom to lift others up? To be for each other and not look for a way to take from each other. When you put others first, it will change the world, but also it'll change your world. And who knows, it might even change the world. I think that is exactly what Jesus had in mind for us. You are not just free from, you are free for. Try it. You just might be surprised how it all works out.